Hey guys, it's Oren Sharif here. Today we are interviewing with someone named Joseph Nelson. He's an instructor at GA, and we're going to have a discussion about data science, about who he is and where he's from. So, Joseph, nice meeting you today.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate you having me in.
So we want to go over a couple things to the audience, who you are, what your background is, where you came from, and what you're up to.
Sure. So, Joseph, as you mentioned, I currently teach data science at General Assembly, which, if you're unfamiliar, offers programs to accelerate typically adult learners in technologies that are relevant for the 21st century. So the class that I teach is the Data Science Immersive, so I'm a data scientist by trade. Before this, and actually concurrent with this, I started a company called Represently, and myself and co-founder created a product that makes it easier for lawmakers to keep in touch with the people they're supposed to represent. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, I used to work at Facebook in the DC office, and that team exposed me to the power of what tech can do to make governance more effective. Mm-hmm. And before that, I used to do economic analysis and then did a bit of private sector branding analysis at a couple of PR firms.
Oh, wow.
To keep it brief. Yeah.
That's nice. That's good experience you have there. So our first question to you is, we see that you have a lot of experience in data science. Where did the inspiration come from? Did you have parents or someone inspired you to get data science? Were you a little kid and one day you're like, I'm going to be a data science expert?
Hardly. It was more like, I like to make this joke among data scientists that I made a gradient descent into data science, which is a terrible mathematics joke, but it's pretty true. I, in late high school, knew that I wanted to study economics, and economics, is more or less the art of trying to model a system in a finite way, and then figure out what levers we can do in this system to make it better, whether that's inflation or trade policy, what have you. And then when I went to university, I realized the deeper into economics I got, it was actually just applied statistics. The ability to measure the world, the ability to identify what causes what to happen. And the deeper I got into applied statistics, I realized that, computers can make this process much more accelerated. And pretty soon I was in what we would now consider machine learning, in the territory of the intersection of software and applied statistics or applied mathematics. And so I kind of started up here, then realized applied statistics, realized data science, and that's where we are now.
Oh, makes sense. So that's really interesting. The next question we have for you is your mentors or influencers. Who's mostly influenced you in your life and has helped you along your journey to where you are now?
Sure. So I've displayed here on the slide the key influencers that I have are Marc Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, who run a venture capital firm called A16Z. And particularly Ben Horowitz is famous for kind of a trope of a startup book, but nonetheless a key read called The Hard Thing About Hard Things, where he describes his journey of building a company. And really, both those investors prove the power of staying focused on the founder's vision and taking the steps that you need to assure that vision can be realized. And they invest in companies where founders have big ideas. These are the moonshots of what they're interested in. So both of them, Mark Zuckerberg, he's just a great example of someone who unyieldingly wants to achieve their goal, and in this case it's to connect the world. And how that led him to invest in solar-powered planes or to acquiring a virtual reality company and things like that, and how that constantly connects back to the idea of making the world more open and connected is pretty powerful for how driven you must be to achieve what you want to achieve. And then a bit more on the data science side, there's a researcher called Andrew Ng. He's currently the head research scientist at Baidu, so Chinese Google. And then he is a professor at Stanford and teaches a number of machine learning classes that are very powerful. He's also co-founder of Coursera, which of course is an online place where you can take massive online courses and for free. So you can freely get access to learning the skills that are really important. Yanli Kun, who leads the Facebook Artificial Intelligence Research Lab, or FAIR, and he's a leading scholar in a technology called neural networks. And so if we're familiar with, we've heard about computers being able to be trained and understand the world around us. He's on the cutting edge of that and has been really since 1991. And then the last guy I have listed here is Eugen Shmidova. And Eugen is a funny individual in that, since the age of 16, his research goal has been to build a bot that conducts his research for him. And so this idea of like building something that can get smarter by itself has been his life goal. And I think that's really interesting and powerful.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, we covered a lot of mentors up here. We have the slides up if you guys want to check out some of the people that influenced Joseph in his life. So moving forward, we're going to go through some other things too. We see that you're into data science. How does hockey play a role in your life, and what do you like about it?
Yeah. So hockey's my favorite sport. I grew up playing hockey, and the connection between hockey and data science, well, maybe a bit forced, is pretty interesting. So I'm sure the audience and you may be familiar with Moneyball, the concept of sabermetrics and deconstructing baseball and viewing it through a statistical lens. And suddenly these stat nerds could understand the sport just as well as the jocks and the scouts. Well, hockey is kind of experiencing its own Moneyball moment, where it's not like a solved game, like baseball is kind of a solved game, and it's a very stochastic game. I mean, the game times aren't even constant. Sometimes you have overtime. Possession isn't even clear. The number of people on the ice is 5, sometimes 4, but the top 3 are changing from the back 2. Anyway, there's a lot of what we say noise and difficulty of trying to identify what's going on in the system. And the intersection with data science is, that's data science achieves or strives to achieve identifying signal and what metrics, what heuristics indicate some goal. So in this case, that would be identifying what things in hockey result and cause more teams to win. And so my favorite team is the Detroit Red Wings. And they don't make serious enough investments in sabermetrics or data science in hockey. But the connection is that I like hockey a lot. I like applied statistics and data science a lot. Blending the two is a natural thing for someone to do that has both these interests.
And you heard the Wayne Gretzky quote also, right?
Of course.
You don't make any shots, you miss them all.
Yeah, you miss every shot you don't take, but also his other famous one is skate to where the puck is going. That's where the puck is. Yeah, you'll hear every sharp, well-polished business student sharing that quote with you.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, moving forward, we appreciate your background and how everything's helped you. You've traveled a lot in your lifetime already, and you've traveled probably around the world. And we see your background accomplished. If you want to talk about what was the biggest influence for you, like in your experience in London, or any of the positions you had in Facebook, or giving a talk at the War Powers Commission. What was that like? And could you just explain a little bit more about what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. So an underlying trend in a lot of those trips is I was a debater throughout high school and university. So 8 years of debate experience, and debate is an international competition, but equally afforded me to take some trips and explore, and that's what the War Powers Commission you noted was. So I'll touch on a couple of key trips.
Sure.
One is, you noted London. I studied at the London School of Economics for a year, and that was, they say the UK and the US are two countries separated by a common language, which is like a joke to say that they're very, very similar, but there's just this one thing that's a little bit different. And I found that to be the case. The LSE is filled with incredibly talented, smart students, but the most prestigious thing to do after you graduate from LSE was to take a job at a management consultancy or at a bank, which isn't to say that isn't prestigious in the US, but almost no one had the idea of entrepreneurship, or no one thought about charting their own path. And I think that spoke to the difference of failure tolerance between the US and really the rest of the world, and that was kind of an insightful takeaway. Another trip I'll mention is, so I've been to France a few times. I've been fortunate to go, and actually, because the French embassy sponsored the travel, and that was the result of the French embassy hosts an annual, or sponsors an annual debate tournament called the Lafayette Debates. And the Lafayette Debates are a series of international teams coming together in Washington, D.C. and debating some topic, depending on the year, that touts Franco U.S. integration or French cultural interests. And so the winners of that tournament earn a trip to continue the exploration of that topic and are branded to be young ambassadors who meet with French government officials and continue their investigations of whatever the topic was for that year. And so my partner and I were fortunate to be among the winning teams on multiple years actually, and earned these trips to continue to be, so-called young ambassadors, which was insightful. And the last thing that you noted, this isn't a trip, but you noted it, so I'll add a bit more context. The War Powers Commission.
Yep.
So the debate connection there is, one year the debate topic was about restricting presidential war powers authority. And in fact, Tim Kaine, who is now the vice presidential nominee for Hillary Clinton, and probabilistically likely our next vice president, he has actually been a scholar on war powers. And so the debate topic was an area of his expertise. And so the George Washington University put together an event where we invited him to come speak and witness and listen to students debate issues that face us about, how much executive authority does the president have? Should they have to consult Congress whenever they move drones? Is indefinite detention something that we consider to be okay? And grapple with topics like that. And we got to meet Tim Kaine for that event, and I have to say I was really pleased with how introspective he was as a politician. Some politicians may come to that setting, take a few photos, tout their engagement, but he was truly introspective and stayed throughout the duration of the debate, which was not the expectation. And then later cited, actually, my debate partner in one of his future papers, Katie Stosavsky. And so that was really, really exciting and honorable.
That's great. So you've had some political experience almost, being involved with politicians and, crucial topics that could affect pretty much everyone in the United States.
Yeah, and that's actually the reason I came to D.C. from high school, was the political interest.
You're from Iowa, but you wanted to come to D.C.
Yeah. Iowa, the greatest state in the union. But yeah, so I wanted to come to D.C. I'd been a part of, some politics in Iowa in high school. And Iowa's in a unique position, right? It's the first caucus. So the presidents and everyone come and swarm the state for a few months, and then we disappear from the map again. But for those few months, it's hard not to be a part of the political process. You'd have to actively strive to ignore it. And that inspired, I think that's the reason, that I was inspired to have this political inclination and want to come to D.C. That's why actually the first thing I did when I came here was I worked in Senator Graf's office.
Okay.
And found that to be an interesting part of the political process. And that's part of the inspiration for Represently, is I saw a lot of the inefficiencies firsthand of how people could be better listened to. But
that's great.
Yeah, continued political interest, yeah.
Wow. Well, there you go. You guys want some political inspiration, move to Iowa for a bit and come to D.C. So, well, we appreciate you. Moving right along, we kind of want to get into your presentation here in data science, and then we want to talk about your company that you have. So,
sure.
Can you explain a little bit more about the data science and what you have to show the rest of the audience so we can help educate everyone?
Yeah, so what I've put together here, and I can say from the standpoint of a teacher, of teaching individuals who are anywhere from age 22 to 35, data science is incredibly accessible, regardless of your background. So I want to show some use cases to hopefully inspire people to want to learn data science.
Okay.
But before that, I want to introduce one of my favorite quotes that describes my philosophy of data science, but equally of the world.
Okay.
So George Box, one of the most famous statisticians of the 20th century that no one would have ever heard of unless you're a stats nerd, said, all models are wrong, some are useful. And that's a funny quote, right? Because it's like, why would you try to build a model if you know you can't be successful?
Yeah.
And the idea is that it doesn't matter if it's always right. If we identify some of the signal in what we want to know, then we're okay.
Interesting.
But yeah, let me walk through a few of these,
Sure.
few examples.
I'm going to learn from you too right now.
Awesome, awesome. So the first is, I put together a data science competition to encourage the students in my General Assembly class, but the greater DC community, to predict the Michelin Guide. You know, this elite palette, which restaurants are deserving of this honor of Michelin stars. And the funny thing about this is, data science is a very quantitative field. Food criticism is inherently qualitative. Like you can't, or so you think, can't quantify that bite would mean this restaurant needs to be on the Michelin Guide.
Okay.
And so I was like, that's not true. We can turn this into a data science problem. And so I hosted this competition where I encouraged data scientists in the DC area to try to predict which restaurants are going to end up on the Michelin list. And the reason that's significant is because it was the Michelin Guide's inaugural DC list. In other words, you had nothing to go off of.
So you started it.
Yeah, well, yeah, so started it, sure, but equally, you know, in data science, if you have no basis, like, you're shooting in the dark, or so you think. And so I kind of want to walk through, you know, how data science would solve this problem to inspire and recognize what it is that data science does.
Great.
So the data scientists that were successful in this challenge looked at the Michelin Guide and the other 3 US cities where they were already present, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and looked and saw, based on, you know, these Yelp reviews, based on these Zagat reviews, or the words, or the stars, or the prices, or the chefs in these restaurants, that was Michelin star worthy. And based on identifying those relationships, for example, no Michelin starred restaurant was fewer than $3 signs on Yelp. So you can immediately eliminate, you know, any $1 and $2 sign restaurants on Yelp as a Michelin contender. And so based on learning those relationships in the other cities where Michelin is already present, now look at the same data sources, Yelp, Zagat, etc., and the DC area, and then see which ones meet the criteria that you've learned from other cities. And so in data science, we call that, the other 3 cities in this example are the training set, and DC is your testing set. And we saw great success. In fact, the winner correctly predicted 7 of the 12 restaurants, and for each of the 7, nailed the number of stars for them. And that's a big deal because DC didn't earn any 3-star restaurants. And so knowing that and correctly predicting that there would only be 2 and 1 stars, and getting all of those right was significant. I in fact challenged some of my foodie friends who said they'd be able to nail these predictions to try to beat them, and the data scientists won.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
DC didn't have any 3-star restaurants?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh.
You know, some people thought that.
Step up your game, DC.
Yeah, maybe next year. I mean,
Maybe
they'll annually renew it. But yeah, so that was and so I mean, I didn't even say the cool part about this. The Michelin Guide sponsored this competition. You know, initially I just started it, and then Michelin heard of it. They got word of it because there was a bit of press surrounding it. And then they got in touch with me, and they decided to put behind another cash prize. So between GA and the Michelin Guide, the winner earned $500, and then 2 tickets to the French ambassador's residence for the unveiling of the guide on Thursday evening for a couple weeks ago.
Wow, there you go.
That was, yeah.
That's interesting. So that's really good you guys got involved in that, and Michelin sponsored. You guys going to do that again in the next year?
That's the plan. And then I actually will host another competition in partnership with the French Embassy, which I'll talk about here in a second.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Let's keep it moving along because we want
Sure.
to see what else you have going on here.
Sure. So another use case is the company that I'm building.
Yeah, if you could talk about the company and where people could find you, and if they want to look up more information about it too.
Yeah, you can find us at represently.com. Represently is, as I noted, a lawmaker-centric platform for them to connect with their constituents. But equally important is constituent input. And so constituents that want to reach out to the lawmaker can use Represently to do that.
Wow.
And so the big idea here is that, you know, a lot of people think that disengagement in politics is because people aren't engaging. You know, the narrative is that, oh, like young folks or not enough people want their voice heard.
Yeah.
The opposite is true. Lawmakers are inundated
Yeah.
with communication. We're talking, you know, 4,000 letters a week. And no human can feasibly sort through all of that communication. In fact, Congress hasn't had more people on their staff since 1972, I believe. In other words, the number of people they can hire has been capped. At the same time, the number of ways you can communicate with your lawmaker have just grown exponentially,
Exactly.
right? And so there's this big disconnect between lawmakers wanting to listen, but not having the capability to do so. So using natural language processing, which is the ability for computers to understand language in the same way people do, we identify what it is that people are writing in about. What topics do they want to have a response? And whereas that process is manually identified, like people manually sorting those 4,000 letters a week, we automatically do it.
Oh.
And then we automatically suggest the response based on the responses that the lawmaker has previously written to similar issues.
So you make it easier for people to talk to lawmakers and
Yeah.
basically fill the gap that's missing that we've been searching for a long time.
Right, right. And so lawmakers require less effort for a better relationship. And the constituents happier because they get a response that actually answers what they talked about. And the average response time right now is 3 weeks. With a Represently system, we bring that down to within a week.
Okay.
And so the big thing there is it's clear value add of you get a more targeted response to the thing you wrote about and faster. And so the vision is, this is just where we're at now. The vision is to make this the default way that you communicate with your lawmaker at the state level, the federal level. The implication is clear. If you had a network wherein I can connect with you, another constituent, we can both say this is an issue that matters a lot to us, push that up to our lawmaker, and then our lawmaker sees, oh man, Joseph and 10,000 others care about this issue, I need to give it a response.
Yeah, that's great. You're really bringing the community together to engage in important talks that people would otherwise not be able to.
Right.
So that's amazing. So
Right.
people can just go to represently.com.
That's right.
Okay, great. Sign up and get on board and really start making moves here.
Yeah. The represently.com is targeted only for lawmakers right now, and so in January, constituents will be welcome to sign up too. But on the represently.com, you'll see the ability to contact me through that page. So if people are interested, then we welcome their insight.
So in January, people are going to be able to.
Yeah, people will be able to create their accounts. Right now, it's lawmaker accounts.
Oh, that's great, great. So you guys got to check out Joseph Nelson, check out his account, and get on board with the company. It's really going to help people. So moving along, we want to keep it going. The next slide you got for us here.
Yeah, I had a third example of data science, keeping with the food wine theme. So the French embassy, who I've been able to establish a nice relationship with, that originally started from those debate competitions I started, but has grown and flourished into much larger, had a France Culture Award where they accepted applicants that wanted to spread French culture in the U.S. And I didn't know a lot about French culture, but I knew a lot about data science. And so I proposed building a wine recommendation engine. And so recommendation systems are actually just data science. So when you're on Netflix and it says you should watch this, and you're like, man, how did they know that?
Yeah.
Data science is the answer. We wanted to build one for wine, and so that anyone could receive a wine recommendation, a wine pairing, based on their preferences, and based on other users' preferences that match their preference as well. And so we applied, and the French embassy loved it, and we were really excited. So we put together this hackathon. It lasted 36 hours of just straight coding, which is shorter than most hackathons, believe it or not. And then what we built was a content-based filtering system, which means you match wines based on which wines are most similar to one another. So if you really liked a crisp white and you reviewed that, you give it a 5 out of 5, then you're going to receive recommendations similar to that crisp white.
Oh.
And so we built that, and we didn't push it to production. We gave them a nice demo version, however, to demonstrate the power, and they were really excited about it, and since then have encouraged us to launch a Kickstarter campaign and begin and turn this into a real serious endeavor. And so that's where we're at with this. I mean, to give a context of the timeline, we sent the application in fall of last year, had the hackathon in April, and then just recently presented it to the embassy. They've been very excited about the prospects.
That's great.
So the data science there is, you have these 500 French wines, and we actually scraped, so we automatically grabbed those wines from the internet. Which wine should I give you? And the way we answered that question is, we had you fill out a survey, just like a quick thing, like, what are you having for dinner? What's your appetizer? What's your main meal? What's your dessert? And based on that, we took care of all of the sequencing and the back end so to speak, of making some recommendation, and we provide that recommendation. It doesn't stop there. You need to provide feedback on the quality of that recommendation. Once you've provided that feedback, we know, oh man, we really missed the mark, or hey, we did really well, we should continue with similar recommendations.
Oh, I see. So it makes it a lot easier to get one, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a fun example of data science more than it was meant to be an independent product.
Of course. That's great. Yeah, you guys got to check that out also. And I see you won the France On Campus Award too.
Yeah.
What was that like?
For this, yeah. So that was I partnered with GW, and I'm a guest lecturer at their Masters of Data Science program. And so I partnered with them to put on this event. So they gave us some cash, and that was for the hackathon to put together what we built.
That's great. You must be an expert at wine now.
I wouldn't go that far. Be careful. Be careful.
Awesome. That's great. Well, yeah, we appreciate you giving the background. I think you have another slide for us too.
Yeah, one more. Just basically, so I mean, I've been sitting here talking about the importance of learning and getting involved and so forth. So I have a slide that I encourage us all, viewers, anyone, to really take a look at how to learn fundamental core data science. It's surprisingly accessible. Code Academy is a great resource for learning the syntax. My preferred language for this is Python. DataQuest has data science walkthroughs, so if you want to learn how to build a web scraper or identify data. Dataschool.io is run by my friend Kevin Markham, and if you actually Google Confusion Matrix, he's the top suggested result. He's a real thought leader in data science as well, and so he has a number of resources available. For in-person and working with people like me, there's General Assembly, and I know our viewers may not be in DC. General Assembly has 15 campuses around the world, and so if you want to get someone that works with you through the process of learning, GA is a great place to go. And then the last thing is, I'm passionate about making it accessible for people to learn. So you can find me on Twitter at Joseph of Iowa. That's also my GitHub.
Okay.
My YouTube is Joseph Nelson, Iowa. And I actually have a newsletter, a weekly newsletter to encourage people to go to data science events. And those are predominantly in DC, but then we also have news and interesting data sets that come by every week. And so I've included the link here on the slide available, GOO.GL/1J7NAA, for anyone that wants to click through and sign up and join the newsletter.
Great. So if people want to follow you, they can check out your newsletter, your Twitter, and your YouTube channel.
Exactly.
That's great. We appreciate it. So last question before we let you go. What's the next step? What's the goal, the vision for you? What's coming in the future? You got any big exciting news people should know about? Tease them with.
Yeah, I mean, a few. I mean, first is keep an eye on the product we're in the future we're releasing for Represently. We have. I'll let our CTO talk about it, but we have some cool products for enabling. I was hinting at it, people to not just connect with their lawmaker, but with one another in an effective way. Another thing is I'm planning another hackathon in DC on December 4th.
Okay.
If you want to participate, you are welcome to join. And it's in partnership with the French Embassy.
Okay.
Just continuing those relations. The winner will win a dinner cooked by the chef at the embassy, who's just a world-renowned chef.
It's going to be delicious.
Yeah, so we encourage folks that want to be a part of data science or software development or French culture, any of the above, to come to that. And then, I always have a side project. I'm always building something because I want to stay sharp and continue to learn new things. The best way to learn new things is to do them. And so this weekend I'm building a web page that tracks everything I do to be sure that I'm doing things 1% each week. So it's the number of pages read, the amount of code I write, and the my mile split times for running. So those are some things I'm working on.
That's great. Mentormind told me if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. You always want to be creating, otherwise you're disintegrating. So it seems like you're on the rise and you're consistently creating stuff. So
It's a goal.
People should follow you, and they can find you on YouTube, Joseph, on your Twitter, and also your newsletter. So.
Yeah, Joseph of Iowa. Very Twitter accessible.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. Thanks, Joseph, so much for participating in this interview, and we're going to have people follow you online and check out Joseph Nelson and Represently and get on board with them. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.